Hello there. Well, I was invited to do a video conference, and it's in Egypt. It's an international turnaround conference, and this is my current setup. This is my new laptop, which I've only had for a month or two. It's a Dell Alienware M17, a very good machine. But I'm using the in-screen camera and the in-screen microphones, and I'm just in my studio, which, as you can see from behind me, has formerly been primarily devoted to things guitar related. Had a bit of a gas problem for a while, heavily promoted by my lovely wife. Instead of, most people that get gear acquisition syndrome, their wife kind of tempers it down. She was sort of an enabling force. So we got that, and we got some other guitars over here, that you can see. In the end, my decision is that this is insufficient quality to be doing in anything other than phoning your friends type of thing. To start with, I know you're all looking up my nose, and I just hate that. So this is going to be the video of how I evolve that in what I'm going to add to it. So I'm going to start by just taking some general advice about lighting, right? So let's turn on some lights. And we'll put on some direct face lighting sort of in the front, a little bit of overhead lighting, and right away we've improved our quality of our video, but this is still not what I'm looking for. Alright, so now I've got the Logitech camera hooked up, and I'm using the Logitech microphones at this time. This camera is an amazing 90-degree field of view. I read somewhere on the web that if you run it at a lower field of view, you lose resolution. This would be a standard field of view, 78 degrees for a really quite good webcam, and this would be kind of similar to this what I was using immediately before with my desktop or with my laptop. It's 65 degrees. We go all the way up to this 90 degrees. It's just wonderful. The other thing this camera has is HDR control, so I haven't played with much of this yet. Turn it on, turn it off, and I can zoom, apparently, not necessarily wanting to. Right, so I've got my field of view set at 90. Okay. Now apparently here's the other thing. If I'm zooming, it's not an optical zoom, so theoretically you lose quality when you zoom. But I don't really have too much problem with that. I'm thinking we're okay. Okay, so we'll shut him right off. What is this? Yeah, so that's interesting. You can manipulate this camera. This is all digital, of course. Nothing's really moving, but it will make it some interesting features. So then we'll go back to the full camera and quit screwing with it. I've got the autofocus on. I've got the auto white balance on. I've got the anti-flicker set at 60 Hertz. And I horizontally flip the source, and that's kind of funny because it puts it, the camera wants it to look like that, which is actually a mirror image. Because what it looks like when I turn around is like this. Like that's where I'm seeing things. So that's how I'm going to run the camera. Now the other thing we have here is our new lighting system, which I showed earlier. It has the ability to go brighter or darker, but it has another very cool ability to change the color temperature. So you can try to find things that better work with you. So already with this package, this Logitech camera and the mount and the light, and you can see in this studio room, everything else is the same. I have the overhead lights on, I have that side light on, but the presentation quality is improved. I'm going to turn the overhead lights off and see what happens. And now we're starting to look more studio-like when we do something like that, right? We can make up for it with they really want. Okay, we're back again. We've got the camera set up. We've done a bunch of rearranging. We've changed our backdrop around a bit so that we can get a bigger field of view. Partly because I'm hoping to gain enough room here to be able to do two-person stuff and still, you know, achieve that whole goal of post-plague. Alrighty. So now when it's all said and done, this is the type of presentation I can do. Now I want to be able to stand up and present with the size I'm showing here. I'm kind of confined to sitting down. So I'm going to be buying some more of that green muslin fabric, and I'm going to be expanding my capabilities. The other thing I'd like to be able to do is interviews, and you know, I can reach out of frame with one arm's length. So clearly in today's world, I'm not going to be able to do interviews with this setup. So I think I got to move a little bit back. I'm going to have to go all the way back to the back wall. And I think I'm going to buy a bunch of this fabric for drapes, because as long as it's far enough away, apparently I can just drape things like the amplifiers and stuff, and they'll disappear into the background. And I think that's probably going to be true, because I had to change my shirt before I started this segment because there was too much green in that particular shirt, which who even knew that shirt had green in it. So this is going to see if I lean too close, I get out of focus. So I do need to be further back in order for things to work better than they are now, but this is pretty pleased with this setup. The other thing I've added in, hopefully it's going to be clear in the recording, is we're now using my studio mic. So we have an SM58 sitting more or less in front of me, and then I have an SM57 kind of up in the ceiling as an ambience mic. So we'll see how that compares to the recordings we made with the mics in the camera. I gotta believe that the studio mics are going to give me a better recording, but if they don't, then we'll just accept that and cut them right out of our loop, because, you know, Lord knows, the less things you have hooked up, the less things there are to go wrong. So I'm pretty happy with where I've got to, and I'm going to try to complete a reel. Okay, let's take a quick look at how the studio ended up being. So as you can see, I've met my one goal. I am able to have two people in here respecting the COVID distances and to do interviews and things of that nature. We did end up with studio quality lighting, right? And we did end up with augmentary front lighting, and we chose this Logitech Brio camera. That'll be our main camera. We incorporated our studio equipment. So that gives us a 2-microphone system. We're using a Shure SM58, and we're using a second Shure SM57 up in the ceiling for ambient. And in behind the curtain, of course, that's where all the equipment that was here is hidden. Hello. Welcome to my web studio. I have managed over the last couple of weeks to get to this final point. I've achieved my goals of being able to have two people within not reaching distance, keeping light with the COVID rules. I've achieved my goal of being able to stand up, to present, and to speak. I've added some presentation software, which is what I'm using for this recording now, so I can do all kinds of things. I can put a presentation up here, and I can click through my presentation. Right? I could focus on just the presentation, and I can come back to where we were. I could be doing this presentation standing up then, and presenting in a more normal format, or I could be doing this presentation perhaps in conjunction with another person, and we could be sitting here in relative comfort. I think I've achieved my goals for the time being, and there's a few things I just want to close with. When I started on this journey, one of the more frequent things that I found in my early Google searching were statements to the nature of, at the very minimum, you need a DSLR camera as a starting point. I don't believe that's true. I don't believe there's anything wrong with this starting point. Just to be clear, I'd love to add a DSLR camera, and it's going to be easier for me to do than it would be if I was starting cold, because I have a Canon EOS system for 35mm. So I am hoping to add a DSLR body to replace the old SLR body, and then bring that into general use. But for the time being, my iPhone 7 will be my traveling camera until such time as I can upgrade that. And my Logitech Brio here in the studio will be carry the primary load of the studio. When I can manage to get a new body and put my very nice self-focusing EOS lenses back into service, that'll give me further traveling options and further studio options. Really, I wouldn't mind augmenting that iPhone with a GoPro camera at some point along the way too, but I suspect at 60 years old I'll be doing limited amounts of ice climbing and avalanche skiing, so I think I will be able to get by using the iPhone for quite some time. And I believe I can hold off spending the several $1,000s it takes to upgrade my old 35mm camera as well. So that's it. That's in closing. That it took perhaps a couple of weeks. Ordering most stuff from Amazon. I didn't spend a lot of money. The camera there are less expensive cameras, but in the end I think this is probably the right camera to build something this around, because if you're going to be doing streaming, you need to be able to stream at a reasonable quality and frame rate. So right now I'm streaming at 1080p and 30 frames per second. I could stream with this particular camera at 1080p and 60 frames a second. That is apparently quite important to people like gamers. But if you go above 30 frames a second, you don't get as good at anti-aliasing support and control of this background, to make it work as nice as possible. So I'm choosing to shoot everything now at 1080p, 30 frames per second, and we'll see how that goes. This particular camera is capable of both recording and streaming in 4K as well. I'm not going to bother with that at this time. So this has been a great journey, and I thank you for following along with me. And let's produce some video.